I have decided that we'll kind of skip around a bit in Yevamot. I've had enough of the four brothers and the three sisters and the and so forth and so on. So I skip now to chapter 6 of Yevamot. I think there's some interesting things that are a little more engaging than the details with that we've been dealing with in terms of the technicalities of that the Mishnah continues. This chapter begins Haba al Yevinto, a brother-in-law, surviving a brother-in-law who has intercourse. Haba, bia. Ba, of course, means to come, but bia means to engage in intercourse with his brother's widow, bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'ones, bein b'ratzon, whether intentionally or unintentionally, bein b'ones, bein b'ratzon, whether kind of in coercion or whether willingly. In other words, no matter in what he was intended or what she intended, if they have intercourse, then we will see kana. Down here, kana. Kana means he has married her.
He bought her.
Well, literally acquired her. That is the relationship. We saw this last time, that the yibum is effectuated by intercourse. And what this Mishnah is saying is any intercourse that the surviving brother has with his sister-in-law, who is now a widow with no children, any intercourse, whether it be intentional or accidental, whether she intends that this be a formal relationship or whether or not, who mezid behi shogeget. He does it intentionally and she is not sure. He is forced and she is not, or she is forced and he is not. And then it continues, Echad ha'me'areh ve'echad ha'gomer. Me'areh means the intercourse is not complete. That is, they engage in the initial stage of intercourse. They have not really intercourse, but they began with foreplay, or they completed the act. This is equivalent. This whatever it is, just beginning the process forms the relationship. And then the Mishnah concludes, Velo chalak bein bi'ah levi'ah. And there is no difference Similarly, the Torah did not distinguish between an act of intercourse in an atypical manner, that is anal intercourse, and intercourse in a typical manner. This is known in the tradition as bia kedarka, bia shelo kedarka. The commentaries are a little strange, I have to say, in regard to the Mishnah saying intentionally or unintentionally. So the commentators say maybe they were having intercourse. He thought he was going to a prostitute, but it turned out it was his sister-in-law. So he didn't really intend to do yibum. He was just having sex. That counts. If by accident he had intercourse, that is, she maybe didn't intend it to be a formal relationship. They were just having sex. That counts. No matter under what circumstances, if they have this sexual relationship, even if the intercourse is unnatural or only partial in the sense that it really isn't full intercourse, this creates the relationship. This business of bia shelo kedarka, there's of course a famous joke about the young boy studying Gemara and he raises his hand and he says to the teacher, what does bia shelo kedarka mean? So the teacher says, and you know what bia kedarka means? I don't know how, whether any young kids are studying this stuff or not, but it reminds me of a comment that my professor of Hebrew made at Brandeis. He was a strange guy, but he said, he said the Bible is a dirty book, and the Talmud, it's even dirtier. The rabbis have no problem talking about these things that seem a bit risque, a bit that we wouldn't normally talk about these things. The issue of bia shelo kedarka is the tradition looks to this verse that we're going to read on Yom Kippur in the afternoon. The Torah reading for Yom Kippur in the afternoon is from Leviticus, the laws of arayot, of incest. And there in chapter 18, verse 22, the famous verse that is today pointed to as problematic for male homosexuality. Et zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha. mishkaveh is plural. And it's the basis of this plurality that the rabbis come up with two kinds of intercourse. One is normal, bia kadarka, and the other is anal intercourse. Bia kadarka and bia shelo kadarka. I thought it would be interesting to look a little bit at this business of the attitude of the rabbis with regard to intimate relationships between a man and his wife. In the Talmud, in Masechet Nedarim, we read the following: whatever a man wishes to do with his wife, he can do it. Kol ma she'adam rotzeh la'asot b'ishto oseh. In other words, as our translation commentary says, he may engage in sexual intercourse with her in any manner that he wishes. The previous part here talks about some restrictions, and this is saying without any restrictions. And it says, as an allegory, it is like meat that comes from the butcher. Basar haba mi beit hatabach. If the man wants to eat it with salt, he eats it that way. If he prefers to roast it, he can roast it. If he prefers to boil it, he can boil it. He can eat it any way he wants. V'chein dag. And so also with fish. You can eat it any way you want. And then the Gemara tells a story. A woman who came before Rabbi, which is Rabbi Judah the Hanasi, the editor of the Mishnah, who's known only as Rabbi, my teacher. We don't have to say Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, just Rabbi, and that's who's referred to. She said to him, Rabbi, arafti lo shulchan, I set a table for him, for my husband, v'hachvacho, and he turned it around. I set him a table using a euphemism to say that she lay before him during intimacy, and he turned it over. Hafacho. So Rabbi says to her, Biti, my daughter, Torah hitiratech, ve'ani ma'aselich. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, my daughter, the Torah permitted him to engage in sexual intercourse with you even in an atypical manner, meaning anal intercourse. That's turning the table over. Let me get this. Ani ma'aselich. And then there's another story. Another woman comes before Rav. Rav is in the first generation of Babylonian Amoraim, that is, those who studied the Mishnah and created the Babylonian Talmud. His real name was Abba Aricha, but he is known just by the title Rav. And she said to him, Rabbi, my teacher, arachti lo shulchan vehafacho. Same story. I set the table for him and he turned it over. And Rav said to her, Mashna min binita. What's the difference between a fish? That is, a fish you can eat any way you wish. So these two sources are proof texts, are seen as proof texts to affirm that anal intercourse is something that is affirmed and is considered the prerogative of the husband. And we have here these two cases. Now, I want to be fair and to look in a more general way at traditional sources regarding intimate relations between a husband and a wife. And I found a compilation of sources from the Babylonian Talmud on this subject. And in Ketubot, in Masechet Ketubot, which God willing will come to soon, it says that a husband is required to engage in sex with his wife, and it kind of lays it out in terms of what the husband does for a living. If it's a wealthy man, then he should have intercourse with his wife every day. If he is a laborer, it should be twice a week. Donkey drivers, once a week. Camel drivers, once in 30 days. And sailors, once in 6 months. The principle is that as the rabbis understand the biblical verse, a wife has the right to intercourse depending on the husband's occupation on a regular basis. That's her right. And it is an obligation of the husband. In the Talmud in Masechet Eruvin, in Seder Moed, it is quoted as saying, a man is forbidden to have marital relationships to compel his wife, to force her to have sex. And Rabbi Joshua ben Levi says, whoever compels his wife to have sex will have unworthy children. So it seems that a wife cannot be forced, but a man, a husband, has an obligation. In Masechet Yevamot, which we're studying now, it says Rabbi Joshua ben Levi, again, the same Palestinian rabbi, whoever knows his wife to be a God-fearing woman and does not have regular sex with her is called a sinner. Another quote in Eruvin, if the Torah, if the Torah had not been given, we could have learned modesty from the cat, honesty from the ant, chastity from the dove, and good manners from the rooster, who first coaxes and then mates. I wanted just to quote Rambam, Mishnah Torah, Maimonides. Since a man's wife is permitted to him, he may act with her in any manner whatsoever. That's, of course, based on our Mishnah. He may have intercourse with her whenever he so desires and kiss any organ of her body he wishes, and he may have intercourse with her naturally or unnaturally. That is, either anal or oral sex, provided that he does not expend semen to no purpose. Nevertheless, it is an attribute of piety that a man should not act in this manner with levity, and that he should sanctify himself at the time of intercourse. It's a bit complicated, and I didn't want to leave you with just our Mishnah, which seems to state that a man can do whatever he wants. It's not quite that simple. Any questions, Steve?
Yeah, so it's a sort of a comment. There's a really, really good podcast called Intimate Judaism, which is produced by a sex therapist and a rabbi, where they discuss all kinds of topics about intimacy. And if you're interested in learning about this,
Judaism.
It's called Intimate Judaism. It's worth listening. The sex therapist is one of my neighbors.
Oh, really? But it's in English?
It's in English.
Hello, Rabbi.
And
we missed
my
you.
apologies. I have to go.
I was buying food for Yom Kippur.
Yeah. But you're early. You don't need it until Tuesday night.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I just got tied up.
Well, everyone should have a Gemar Chatima Tova.
Good to everybody. My friend Steve. Friend Steve was alarmed that I wasn't on, so he, yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, we missed you.
Well, I miss every bit of learning, and I get a lot from this class. So it's a blessing for everyone who can participate.
Okay. I'm sorry, Karen isn't on. Anyhow, any question, Bob or Steve? Okay. So the next Mishnah continues the issue of mamzerut, and that reads as follows: someone who has intercourse, haba, comes but it means to have intercourse with one of the forbidden arayot, one of the forbidden relationships in the Torah, or pisulot, or a woman that is unfit, that is pasul. They should not be having sex. Like, for instance, a widow who is having sex with the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. The high priest cannot marry a widow. A regular priest, Kohen Hedyot, Kohen Gadol, the high priest, Kohen Hedyot, just a normal priest. Such a normal priest cannot marry a gerusha, a divorcee, or a chalutza, or a woman who performed chalitza. That is, she was married, her husband died, and her brother-in-law does not want to marry her, so they perform chalitza. Such a woman cannot marry a regular Kohen. We've seen that before. It's not explicit in the Torah, but it is here in the Mishnah. Also, a woman who is a mamzeret, a product of a forbidden or a unfit, that is pasul, something that was wrong, that is forbidden, or that such a woman cannot have intercourse. That's the mamzer or a netina. We've seen this this word natin. This, as we saw before, refers to a Gibeonite. The Gibeonites in the time of Joshua were accepted as part of the people, but limited. They had specific duties of carrying water and wood, but they were not considered fully Jewish, and therefore cannot marry a Jew. So also a Jewish, fully Jewish woman, Bat Yisrael, having intercourse with a mamzer or with a natin, a Gibeonite. Such relationships are pasal. They disqualify her from marrying the priesthood. They are forbidden relationships, and any such a relationship makes that woman pasul, unfit to marry a Kohen. Velo chalak bein bia levia, just like we saw before in the previous Mishnah, and there is no difference whether it be bia kedarka or bia shelo kedarka, whether it be regular intercourse, vaginal intercourse, or anal intercourse. Let's look just at the English for a minute. So too, with regard to a man who had intercourse with any one of those with whom relations are forbidden by the Torah, or with those who are unfit for them, even though they're not in the category of incest. For example, a widow with a high priest, or a divorcee, and a Yivama who performed chalitza, that is the woman who died, whose husband died without any children, and her brother-in-law didn't want to marry her and therefore performed chalitza. She can't marry a common priest. A mamzeret, that is a woman born from either incestuous or adulterous relationship, or a Gibeonite woman, Natina, with an Israelite man, or the daughter of an Israelite, that is an Israelite woman, with a mamzer, or a Gibeonite man. He has disqualified her from marrying into the priesthood through this act, no matter how the act was performed, whether it be vaginal intercourse or anal intercourse. I have I Googled in the Wikipedia the issue of anal intercourse, or shall I say bia shelo kedarka, and one of the interesting things that I found is that there is a bit complicated. The common explanation of the stories that we read about the women who said they set the table and their husbands turned the table over, this is commonly understood to be anal intercourse. However, the famous commentator to the Mishnah Torah, who is known as the Ravid, his name was Rabbi Abraham ben David, and he lived at the time of Maimonides and wrote a extended commentary on the Mishnah Torah. And he thinks that turning the table over is not anal intercourse, but rather it is vaginal intercourse, but from the rear, and that this is permitted by the Talmud, but but anal intercourse is not permitted. This seems to be, from what I can pick up from here, a unique view, and the general view is that anal intercourse is bia shelo kedarka. It's apparently his view is not accepted by other authorities. Questions? Nobody.
I'm amazed at how specific all this stuff is, and they're going back centuries. It's kind of unbelievable.
Well, it is, those we who have grown up in America, which still has kind of a Puritan environment. We kind of react to this as wowie, but apparently for the rabbis, this was just something to talk about. It was not considered out of bounds, which I think is remarkable. That they're so detailed and so open, and that these are matters that one studies and talks about, and it's not something out of bounds, which seems to us that it should be. But
Rabbi, we have restrictions on food, kosher versus non-kosher. It would seem to me that physical intimacy is or should be viewed as something holy, and there should also be a sense of propriety and boundaries there, restrictions.
I did, before you got on, I did read a number of passages from the Talmud, which show that it isn't as open as this Mishnah seems to say. This Mishnah seems to say anything goes. But if you look at the total picture, I think you find it much less, more complex. That this particular Mishnah seems to imply no holds barred. But if you look at the total picture, there is concern and an explicit statement that a man cannot force his wife to have intercourse. It is his the wife has the right to, and the husband has the obligation, but the husband does not have the right to force his wife to have intercourse. There are other things here that I skipped, but I should say in Ketubot, there must be close bodily contact during sex. This means that this is a quote, that a husband must not treat his wife in the manner of the Persians, who perform their marital duties in their clothes. This provides support for the ruling of Rav Huna, who ruled that a husband who says, "I will not perform my marital duties unless she wears her clothes and I wear mine," must divorce her and also give her the value of the ketubah. In other words, if a husband refuses to perform his marital obligation in a loving, romantic, sexually pleasing way, his wife actually has the right to demand a divorce. Since divorce was usually considered to be the husband's prerogative, this is a remarkable statement about the importance of sexual pleasure within a marriage. There's also a passage in Masechet Gittin, which we'll come to hopefully soon. 3 things enfeeble a man's body: to eat standing, to drink standing, and to have marital intercourse in a standing position. So I just wanted you to see that our particular Mishnah is not the only thing in our tradition, and there are other sources which do provide some limitations. Yes, Steve.
I don't know if it's law, tradition or law, that the purpose, or if I've just made up something that I've heard that isn't correct, that the purpose of a sexual relation is either primarily or basically for reproduction. That's the first question. The second one is and I'm not Orthodox and you're not, but you know about this. What about this Orthodox sexual relationship, which is, I believe, has a sheet with a hole in it between? Is this just a narishkeit, or is this true? And if it is true, then what you said a moment ago doesn't seem to be in line with that bodily contact.
I think that's an urban legend.
Okay.
I don't think it's true. In terms of procreation, I'm quoting now from this passage that I saw on My Jewish Learning. We generally think of traditional Judaism as being concerned only with procreation, but these texts show that there's more to it than that. Obviously, the commandment in the Torah, pru urvu, to be fruitful and multiply, is considered a major requirement. It's addressed to the man, not to the woman, and therefore a woman can, according to the Torah, use a contraceptive, but the man has the obligation of procreation, and but as I've quoted some of these sources, there is concern for the woman to enjoy to have pleasure, to be fulfilled from the sexual relationship. So it's not only procreation in our tradition, if you look at the whole picture. And that's something that I was concerned with providing you today. Any other questions? Okay. So
did you say that the woman can do something to prevent conception if so, I mean, why would the obligation be on the man? It would seem kind of contradictory. If it's Peru, Uravu, however you say it, it seems contradictory.
No, the man cannot. The man has the obligation to procreate.
But the woman, if she,
But
if the woman can prevent procreation, it doesn't make sense.
Yes, it
No.
does. If he uses the
So
other wife.
there are sources that indicate that women, even in ancient times, found ways to prevent, to use contraception so that they don't become pregnant, particularly when they were nursing the baby, lest they become pregnant and then lose the milk for the baby they already have. The tradition understands pru or vu to apply only to the man, not to the woman.
It's also during the time of polygamy, so there's always the other wife.
Yes, that's true too. Or the other wives, but usually only one. Yes, okay. Oops, come on. I don't know what's going on here. Application. I don't know what happened here. Okay. You see the next one? The third Mishnah. Almana lechoin gadol, grusha v'chalutza lekohen hedyot. Again, these are the pesulim. They are not. These are unfit, pasul. It's not asur. It's not forbidden, but it is pasul. This makes it doesn't work. It's not that it's forbidden, it just is not allowed. So this is a less severe. A widow is not to marry the high priest. A divorcee or a woman who had chalitza, a normal kohen. And then it adds, min ha'erusin lo yuchlu batruma. If they're getting married, this is not forbidden, this is an unfit. They are not permitted, and therefore, lo yuchlu batruma. We mentioned this before, that truma was food that was limited to the Kohen and the Kohen's family. But such a relationship that is unfit denies the couple from eating truma. Since these women are forbidden to the men who betroth them, the betrothal itself, they haven't lived together yet. They've only done ma'amar. They've only made the commitment, the kiddushin, the first part of the ceremony, not the second part, but that itself disqualifies them from the privileges of the priesthood, even, says our commentary, our translation, which is a commentary here, even if the women themselves, before this relationship, would have been permitted to eat the truma as a daughter of a Kohen. As I said, not only can the Kohen enjoy the truma, which of course is cheaper than regular food available to everybody. Truma was a real advantage of being a Kohen or part of a Kohen's family. Here, such a relationship, even though it's only kiddushin, this does not allow this couple to enjoy truma. But the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Eliezer, here we have a mistake in the translation. Eliezer, there are two names that are often confused, Eliezer and Elazar. Obviously, Elazar does not have a yud in it. This text in Hebrew has Eliezer, and in the English it says Elazar. 6:3. Let me see what the correct is. Elazar is what my text has. So the yud there is a mistake. The Hebrew is wrong here. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon machshirim. They say kosher, not pasul, kosher. Yes, they can eat from the truma. Why? Says the commentary, since the prohibition is violated through the act of intercourse and not betrothal, the women are disqualified only once they have intercourse. In other words, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, if in this case, if it's only a rusin, they can still eat truma. However, once they complete the process and have nisuin under the chuppah and then live together, then they are not permitted. So Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say just halfway, no, that doesn't disqualify them from the truma. All the way, yes. Then the Mishnah continues, nit ar malu o nit garshu. If in a case where these women were either widowed or divorced, nit ar malu or nit garshu, min ha-nisuin pesulot, min ha-erusin kesherot. In a case where these women were widowed or divorced, if it was from marriage, they are disqualified from the truma. This is because a woman prohibited from marrying a priest who has intercourse with a priest becomes a halal, halala, and is thereby disqualified from partaking of truma. However, if they were widowed or divorced only from the state of betrothal, then they are once again fit to partake of truma according to all opinions, says our commentary. In other words, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon make the distinction of between betrothal and full marriage. And they say if it's only betrothal, it's okay. The final statement of court says that that makes the distinction between betrothal and full marriage. And in those cases, they are permitted to have the to have the truma and are not betrothal, yes, but not full marriage. Okay. Any
I
other?
have a question when you're
Yes,
ready.
please. Go ahead. I'm ready.
Going back a little bit before, when you said that women, at least at a certain period of time, had the prerogative to use strategies to prevent pregnancy. So my question is, if that still applies, why are there so many Orthodox families that have huge numbers of children and I would imagine are under great financial stress?
Because they want to.
We will have the opportunity very soon to learn about how the tradition understands our pru or vu, because it's not only that you are to be fruitful and multiply. The rabbis understand that there is another piece of this, which is to inhabit the earth, and so in some communities, I'm sure there's a sense of wanting to make up for the terrible disaster of the Shoah and a need to replenish the Jewish people with the millions that were lost. But the commitment to have many children, even though it does put pressure, obviously, the poverty in those communities is really quite a significant problem. But there's a tremendous support in the community and a feeling, certainly, I remember when I was for a brief time serving the mentor congregation, and the Federation once asked me about a meeting in Lake County about food stamps, and very concerned because there are a large number of the teachers at Telz Yeshiva who rely on food stamps to feed their family. So there is a kind of a, doesn't please me very much, but kind of a reliance on the state for the support needed to feed these large families. I guess the priority in these communities is to have children and not to limit the size because of the cost. Bob, do you want to say something?
Yeah, they have a different value system than what we consider the normal American values. They value having another child more important than jewelry or fancy clothes or going out to dinner or having a new car. The car just has to be big enough to hold the family. It doesn't have to be the latest model or anything like that. It's a whole different set of values. And even the values that we put on education can be different. Social values are different. They value that extra child more than the other things that you give up.
I certainly agree with you. I think that's the answer.
Yeah, I could infer that, but I just wanted it to be discussed.
Yes, no, I think it's we're facing this interesting phenomenon in Cleveland, where so many now we have an influx of the Haredim in University Heights and I guess somewhat in Beechwood, where people are moving from Toronto and from the East Coast to Cleveland because the cost of living is so much lower, and they have all that they need in terms of schools and mikvahs and bakeries and so that Cleveland is now quite an attractive place for these people, and we have an influx of people coming to Cleveland, and in some of these homes, I remember when my daughter was living there for a year, and some of these families have 9 children, and they're in these University Heights homes with 3 bedrooms. But it's more important for them. I certainly agree with you, Bob. It's more important for them to have a big family than a fancy house with lots of bedrooms. That explains it. The problem, I think, in Israel is really significant because what I have read is in terms of the birth rate, very soon Israel will have a very large ultra-Orthodox population who increasingly they're getting involved in the economy, but not yet in significant enough numbers. And the economy of Israel is in great danger, I think, in terms of having people educated in a way that they can continue the very positive economy that Israel is experiencing. If you don't have a new generation educated in a way that they can take these jobs, which are high-tech jobs, then Israel is really in danger, I think. When you look at, say, in Jerusalem, the vast majority of first graders are either ultra-Orthodox or Arab. And that's not only in Jerusalem. So there are efforts, obviously, and I'm sure you saw the terrible article in the New York Times about these Hasidic yeshivas in Brooklyn that are not teaching English or math or science, and so we have a problem. It's not the significance that Israel is dealing with, but it's a problem. And in that sense, those values are, and again, it's a question of values and priorities. For them, Talmud is more important than English. So they'll spend the whole day on Talmud and give English a few minutes. And so I heard someone interviewed yesterday on NPR who has a teenager who reads at third grade level, who reads English at third grade level.
That's not very practical. That's just plain impractical.
But in their value system, they're more concerned about knowledge of Talmud than they are about knowledge of science or math or English or whatever. And so that's, it's a value system that conflicts, obviously, with, it's not only affecting them and their community, but it affects the wider society. And there we have a problem. So
isn't that's in opposition to the concept of Yeshiva University and the more modern Orthodox? What is it? Torah Umada? Torah Umada?
Absolutely. But they reject that. That's the difference between modern Orthodox and what we call the Haredim, or usually they're called ultra-Orthodox, but I call them pre-modern Orthodox. They're not modern Orthodox, they're pre-modern Orthodox, in the sense that they prefer to live the way people lived in pre-modern times. They are not interested in modern values and modern developments. In fact, they see those developments as a threat. And that's why in Jerusalem, there's a big problem now, because the city wants to extend the light rail into ultra-Orthodox or pre-modern Orthodox communities. And those communities don't want the light rail there because they're afraid that their kids will tap onto the train and be exposed to modern values, and they'll be attracted to those modern values and they'll leave the community.
Has there been an effort to establish some of those pre-modern groups in rural areas where they go back to being more like we were originally, agrarian people?
They were not agrarian. That's too far back.
Too far back.
Yeah, these people, they spend their time and their energy on study of Torah, and that's central to their worldview, and all the modern things they see as a threat. And they want to protect themselves and their children from whatever's going on in the world. Yes, Steve.
So at my shul the other on Rosh Hashanah, we had the former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Her name is Vivian Berkovicki, speak, and now she made Aliyah. Once she was there, she decided to stay. And she told us about the coming election, November the 1st, which we will be discussing with Rabbi Peter Haas in a 4 or 5 days later. And she said the issue, if you're in the diaspora, you might think that the issue is the economy or many other issues and security. She says the issue is the division between the Haredi and everyone else, and that they are a threat. That she said clearly that they are the threat to Israel in the future, remaining somewhat the way it is, and that they must be defeated. That's what she said it clearly. They must be stopped in their tracks so that they don't advance their agenda further.
I wish her luck. I wish us all luck. What I have read is that Bibi Netanyahu has a very good chance of being elected again. His party forming a government together with these ultra-Orthodox or pre-modern Orthodox parties, who will then have the power of the purse, which is what they want, and Israel will have some real problems, I think. But we'll wait and see. Those of us who are not Israeli citizens don't have the vote. We are observers, and we can hope. But at the moment, at least, what I have seen is it's not very hopeful. Anyhow, I wish you all a Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be sealed for a good and a healthy year ahead. And I like to use the British term, not to have a good fast or an easy fast, but rather well over the fast. It shouldn't be easy. It should be, what it should be is painful. Be'initem et nafshotechem. That's what the Torah says. You should feel it. You should feel the hunger, but you should get through it, and it should be meaningful, and hopefully a sense of forgiveness, a sense of energy to meet the challenges that we face in the coming year. God bless you.